Honestly, never thought I would sit down and make this video, but I think I need to. I think it's going to help me mentally because I wrote down everything and I saved it to a Word document. So if I glance down, that's what I'm looking at. But I also think it's going to help people. And I'm in the helping people business. So here we go. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Dr. Allie. I am an OBGYN. Here on my YouTube, I share my life with you. I share information about pregnancy and periods and women's health, and I hope that my videos empower you, encourage you, educate you, and just bring you joy, and they uplift you and all good positive things. Now today's video is definitely going to be a little bit more different. I've definitely never made a video. I've never really talked about how I deal with death as a doctor, but I think it's necessary and I wanted to share it with you. I hope it helps maybe another healthcare professional, another doctor watching this video, or maybe if you've lost someone recently, I hope it helps you, or maybe you're just interested in what it's like to be a doctor and deal with death. So my decision to make this video, I think, stemmed from the pandemic. I can confidently say that within the last 2 years, people that are healthcare providers, or honestly, everyone in the world has dealt with a lot of death. Maybe you haven't personally lost someone close to you or a friend to COVID, but I'm sure you know a friend of a friend, or you can turn on the news and see that there has been a lot of death within the last 2 years. But I wanted to share my experience as a doctor with how I deal with death, because I think as doctors, we play a very important role when it comes to death, with either maybe watching a patient die and then having to deliver that news to the family. Both are extremely difficult things, and I know it takes a special kind of people and a special kind of person to be able to do that and then go ahead and function normal day-to-day lives or go about your tasks 5-10 minutes after dealing with something like that. I think with me as an OBGYN, it's an even more particular role because the majority of my job, I'm dealing with life and the beginning of life and how beautiful that is. But unfortunately, even in my field where most of my patients are young and healthy and they're in the reproductive age, you wouldn't expect that you'd also lose a patient, but you do. And that patient may be the mother and that patient may be the baby. And I've experienced both multiple times, unfortunately. So I wanted to share my personal experience, how I cope with that. And I want to reiterate that this is my personal experience and how I deal with it. So maybe my methods don't work for everyone, but I'm here to share them. I know I speak for myself, but I think most people that are in healthcare, or most doctors, choose this career because they genuinely care about people and they genuinely want to help people, want to see people improve, want to make a difference in people's lives. So then when we are faced with problems that we can't fix that then ultimately lead to death, that's going to have an impact on our lives. All right, enough of the intro. I'm going to jump right into the video and explain to you guys how I, as a doctor, as an OBGYN, deal with death. If you are new to this channel, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and become part of this family. Like I mentioned earlier, I love sharing my life with you. I love sharing information for you all, and I hope to be making a lot more content as the year goes on. When preparing for this video, I wanted to make sure and write out my thoughts, because if I didn't, I felt like I would just probably go in circles and just talk and not be organized and not make sense. So like I mentioned earlier, I have my computer sitting on my lap so that I can look over my notes. So I made a list. I thrive off of a good list. There's nothing like writing down a to-do list and getting to cross stuff out, or writing like top 5 favorite this list or top 5 this. So I wrote down my list of how I cope. First of all, I want to start off by saying that I remember every single one. I remember my first time as a third-year medical student watching my first patient pass away. I remember the room. I remember the code. I remember the chest compressions. I remember my attending delivering the news and exactly what was said. I remember the faces on the family, and I don't think that's ever something I'm going to forget. I think when you're involved in a code and you do chest compressions and you push the epi and you are in something like that, it is so traumatic that it just stays with you. It just does. So I want you to know that all of those moments stay with me, and they always will be a part of me, and they shaped who I am as a doctor and who I am as a person. All right, so number one on my list, there's gonna be 5 things. Number one is compartmentalize. Now, I don't really know where I learned to do this. I don't remember it being taught in medical school or anything like that, but I've come to realize that one of the coping mechanisms that I use is being able to compartmentalize my brain into different areas. It's almost like my brain has little folders for all these different little things, and death is one of them. And there's a little folder, a little drawer in my brain where that sits there. What you don't realize as an OBGYN is that we actually deal with a lot of death. And here, I'll give you an example. Say I'm just seeing patients in the office and I go see my first patient of the day. She's 30 weeks pregnant, normal healthy pregnancy. I listen to the baby, I talk to the mom, they're so excited. Everything's looking good. Second patient of the day, go to do the ultrasound. There's no heartbeat. Automatically, that completely changes the visit. I then have to turn off that excitement part of my brain and that happiness and turn on the empathy. My mood just completely changes. Obviously, everything changes, and that visit takes a long time. Then I finish up in that room. I go see my next patient. Normal, healthy pregnancy, so exciting, everything's great. The next 5 patients, everyone's healthy, everyone's happy. The next patient, her baby was born healthy and then passed away from SIDS or passed away from something. Open up that little drawer folder in my mind of death, and in that goes. Same thing happens when I'm on call in labor and delivery. Sometimes I can have 3, 4, 5 laboring patients at once. Sometimes that's 4 normal babies. Sometimes it's an IUFD, which is an intrauterine fetal demise or a stillbirth. And I have to go in that room, open up that folder in my brain, deal with that, then walk over to the room right next door to deliver a normal, healthy baby and be excited and be happy. And it's exhausting and it's hard. So I don't think a lot of people think of the field of OBGYN in that sense, but we see it more often than not, especially even more now during the pandemic. So I think by compartmentalizing in my brain, I'm able to really flip the switch from on and off and turn on this emotion and turn off this emotion, because sometimes as doctors, we are not given the opportunity to take the appropriate amount of time to grieve and process what just happened, because then another patient needs us for a delivery, or we're needed for an emergency surgery, or we're behind in the office, so we need to see the next patient that's been waiting for 20 minutes. So I think being able to compartmentalize makes my day-to-day easier. Now, have I cried at the hospital? Yes, I've cried twice. I remember both times, and I remember why. I absolutely hate crying. I hate crying even more in public. I will address this later on in one of the other points, another point on my list. But there is definitely a time and a place for that, and it's okay, and it's a healthy response because I'm human. And I realize that. But one of the top reasons I deal with death is by being able to compartmentalize. Number 2 on the list is giving myself an appropriate amount of time to process my emotions. So like I said a second ago, a lot of the times on the job, we're not given that ability to kind of process everything. But as soon as I'm off the clock, whether that's on the drive home or when I get home, I allow myself time to process and sit with those emotions. Is it crying? Is it yelling? Is it getting angry? Or making a list on your phone so that you remember certain parts? Usually with me, writing stuff down really helps. I'm one of those people, and I think people can relate to this, that if, say I'm having an argument with someone or I'm upset with someone for whatever reason, I will open up my notes pad on my iPhone and I will write out everything I'm feeling, whether it's angry, like maybe there's curse words in there, or maybe it's just getting it all out. And I have this like huge long note on my phone, and then I delete it. And I think there's something really cathartic with that, at least in my brain. So I'm definitely that type of person, and I'm sure there's people out here that can relate. But I think allowing myself time to really process and really grieve those emotions is extremely necessary. Number 3, talking to someone. Now in my case, I usually talk to Corey or my dad. Corey is my husband, and he can automatically tell if I've had a rough shift, or usually I'm texting him updates throughout the day that it's been tough. So he knows. My dad is a physician. He's also a doctor. He's a vascular surgeon. So he's also been in similar experiences to me. And in medical school, after I experienced my first time watching death, I remember calling my dad. And even to this day, I still call my dad when I've had patients pass away. And being able to have someone that can understand you and relate with you and know exactly what you're going through is extremely comforting. So I'm very lucky that I have someone I can turn to. I also have a strong group of friends that I've talked to them about different experiences and emotions, you know, relating to my job. I always find that very beneficial as well. Whenever I talk to them, I don't expect them to fix anything because there's nothing to fix. It's just more the listen. I don't need you to say anything. I don't need you to pat me on the back and tell me everything's gonna be okay. I just want someone to listen to what I'm saying. And I think when you get to know someone and trust someone to that extent, like just having a body sit there that will listen to you is extremely helpful. Now, I think having someone to talk to is extremely important. Maybe you're not at a point in your life where you have someone like that, which is why I 100% recommend therapy to everyone, because whatever it is that's going on in your life, whether it's death or life issues or whatever it may be, there is something so cathartic and therapeutic about talking to a stranger who is not involved in your day-to-day life, who knows nothing about you, and just talking to a stranger and kind of getting everything off your chest is extremely helpful. Now, did I know to open up and talk to someone right away, especially during residency when I was an intern, I was second year, third year even, and you're so busy and so overwhelmed that a lot of the times I'm like, I remember thinking, I don't have time to think about this. We're just gonna continue to bury it down and not open that death drawer or death folder in my brain because I just cannot. But that's what's gonna lead to burnout, and that's what's gonna lead to you then not being able to function as your best self, and leading to not being able to provide the best care, not being able to be the best friend or daughter or girlfriend or, you know, whatever it may be. I realized in those moments where I wasn't opening up and sharing, that's when I also realized that my anxiety was peaking and getting worse. So now I know that I need to avoid that, and once I've allowed myself to personally spend time grieving, then I can open up with someone. Number 4, working out. Now, this is something that has helped me greatly in all aspects of my life. Usually when I'm stressed, when I'm overworked, going and having a really good workout really helps. Just getting really sweaty in the moment, it sucks, yes, but afterward, you just feel better. It's science, it's fact. After a good workout, you feel better. So I came to realize that after a difficult shift, once I slept, dealt with my emotions, sometimes going for a workout, I'm not a running person, but weightlifting, doing HIIT workouts, getting on the Peloton, any of those things, I would do that for 30 to 45 minutes and I would feel better. This was how I kind of survived residency as well. Getting a good workout routine and sticking to it, it really does help when you're stressed, when you're sad. Trust me, it helps. Number 5, and this is something that I hear a lot in medicine, is that healthcare workers and doctors become numb to death and then also have a dark sense of humor surrounding medicine and their jobs. This kind of ties into the first point that I made of being able to compartmentalize. A lot of the times becoming numb to death gives us the opportunity to not have to process and grieve all of those emotions at once, and then being able to do your job, lose your patient, and then turn and talk to the family and walk them through that and have the empathy to be their support system, to help them make decisions. I think that's what it means, at least to me, to become numb to death. It's not that I'm numb to it and that I don't ever process anything. Obviously, I've made this whole video about this, but I think kind of being able to freeze those emotions in that moment so that you can continue to do your job. That's what it means to me to become numb to death. When I was preparing for this video, I did some research on what other people had to say about how doctors deal with death, and one of the quotes that I found says, "Becoming numb to death is a role that doctors inhabit for patients, almost as shamans between life and death." I thought that was kind of interesting because a lot of the times it is kind of that gap. being able to deal with death and then go back to regular life. So yes, in a sense, as a healthcare professional, you may become numb to death, but that does not mean that we don't realize the gravity and the severity of death, and that we're not able to be empathetic and genuine and sad or lack emotions when we do experience death. It just still allows us to do our jobs and be professional and being able to work despite that happening. So I definitely still respect death and still respect the life of my patients. Another thing is our dark sense of humor, which I know you find in a lot of healthcare workers, which honestly, healthcare workers, we're our own breed of people. I'm just gonna leave it at that, because being in this field, not everyone's cut out for it. And I think having that dark sense of humor is a coping mechanism. It's being able to laugh and try and make light of a situation so that you're not just completely buried under a bunch of darkness and sadness. Again, it's not a means to be disrespectful. It's not a means to not be sensitive to the severity of the situation. It's just a coping mechanism, and it's a coping mechanism that a lot of people use throughout their days. Now, is this defense mechanism completely healthy? Probably not, but it does help some healthcare workers go on their day-to-day lives. As long as you're going home, processing your emotions, talking to someone, seeking help when you need it, I think that's what's going to be the most important, and at least that's what's most important to me. Now, for me personally, I think about the patients that I've lost almost on a day-to-day, weekly basis. Randomly, I'll be driving and the name pops in my mind, picture of their face, picture of the baby, and it just randomly comes to mind. And I am a Christian, so whenever I've encountered this or it pops into my mind, I like to say a quick prayer over the family, because maybe there was a reason that it popped into my mind and maybe someone's struggling. That's my own personal belief. But like I mentioned in the beginning, I never forget. We don't forget. All right, so those were my 5 points on how I deal with death. I know this was definitely a very different video and a little bit more serious, but I also think it was necessary. It helped me, so I hope it helps someone else. Like I mentioned before, if you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you guys would hit that subscribe button and become part of this little family of mine on the internet. In the comments down below, I want to know how you all deal with death. Whether you're a healthcare worker, if you are, let me know. I'd love to know. If it's something that you dealt with recently this past year because of COVID, or maybe it was something that happened 10 years ago. If you have tips, if you have comfort for other people, let's bring this community together and talk about it in the comments. As always, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Thank you so much for all of your love and all of your support. You guys are truly the best community of people, and I am so blessed to have you. Always be kind and show love to one another. I love you guys. Bye.